So the Democratic Party establishment does not realize the fact that corporate Democrats who are too soft on big banks or who are just outright friendly with big banks like Hillary Clinton, they are the downfall of the Democratic Party. Now, with the DNC chair election upon us, it's very possible that the Democratic Party could go in the same failed direction again if they choose Tom Perez, who, during his tenure at the Justice Department and as Labor Secretary, he was soft on big banks. So according to The Intercept, Tom Perez, a leading candidate for the Democratic National Committee chairmanship, has an established record of not taking on the banks, both at the Department of Justice and the Department of Labor. So during his tenure at the Justice Department, he had jurisdiction over the division of the Department of Justice that prosecutes violations of the Service Members Civil Relief Act. Now, the SCRA was first enacted during the Civil War and is designed to cap interest rates that prevent foreclosures for active duty troops. Violations can potentially be charged as misdemeanors, punishable by up to 1 year in prison. Now, JP Morgan Chase actually violated this law by foreclosing on active duty soldiers, and as a result, there were soldiers that actually committed suicide. So some lawmakers actually suggested that this was an act of homicide by the bank. Now, while Chase was forced to pay damages to some of the soldiers who they illegally foreclosed on, none of them went to jail. No bankers at JP Morgan Chase went to jail. Now again, Tom Perez was the Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights from 2009 to 2013, and when the big banks broke the law under his tenure, they were not held accountable. Now, when it comes to his tenure as Labor Secretary, Perez left Justice to become Secretary of Labor in 2013. The Department of Labor has significant bank regulatory authority involving pension funds. Financial institutions found guilty of certain crimes, for instance, are barred from managing pensions unless granted waivers by the Department of Labor. In 2015, Democratic Representative Maxine Waters asked Perez to hold off such a waiver for large banks that had pled guilty to conspiring to rig the foreign exchange markets, but UBS, Barclays, JP Morgan, Royal Bank of Scotland Group, and Citigroup received waivers, letting them go right back to managing pension money. Perez's track record at the Department of Labor was generally respected by unions, a bulwark of the Democratic Party, although union density overall dropped during the Obama administration. For example, Perez implemented a conflict of interest rule to stop financial advisors from cheating people. He adopted a regulation to help more people earn overtime. He advocated for a rule for home care workers to aid their bargaining leverage. But all of that is likely to be overturned because Democrats lost up and down the ballot in 2016, handicapped in part by their aversion to take on the banks. Both Perez and Ellison support pro-labor policies, but Ellison shows that he also wants to oppose concentrated financial power. Perez represents the finance-friendly status quo that has relegated Democrats to minority status. Now, I think that even though Tom Perez did do some good things for labor, to say that he's pro-labor is a little bit of a stretch because he lobbied for the TPP while he was labor secretary. Unions did not want the TPP to go through, and working class voters by and large were against the TPP, hence why they switched from Obama in 2012 to Trump in 2016 because he was against the TPP unequivocally. And with Hillary Clinton, she claimed to be against the TPP, but I mean, she lobbied for it 45 times as Secretary of State, so this was a big issue. Yet, Tom Perez was in favor of the TPP, and this was at the behest of President Obama's donors. So I don't necessarily agree with the notion that he's super pro-labor. Giving us, throwing us a bone here and there, that doesn't make you pro-labor. If you're going to be pro-labor, you need to be pro-labor through and through. Now, I'm not saying, again, that we have to administer a purity test, but I mean, the TPP is a pretty big deal. Let's face it. If you're not against the TPP, I just can't see how you can be considered pro-labor. Now, the thing is that Tom Perez is from the same failed corporate Democratic establishment that lost. He's from the Hillary Clinton wing of the party, and Bernie or busters, progressives, Dem exiters did not come out to support Hillary Clinton. Her own base did not mobilize to support her. So if you put someone from that wing of the party who already lost up and make them the party leader, well, you're going for the same failed status quo approach, but you can't tell them that Tom Perez is part of the same failed status quo approach. They don't want to hear it. Now, the problem with Tom Perez also is that he's just divisive. So the Huffington Post explains, Keith Ellison had incredible support from the quote-unquote establishment side of the party, the progressive side of the party, and the grassroots and elected officials. Nobody was clamoring for another entrance, and yet we got one foisted upon us, said Alex Lawson, executive director of Social Security Works, an organization fighting to expand Social Security benefits. If Tom Perez were to win, the message that would send to the grassroots, to labor unions that endorsed Ellison before Tom Perez joined the race, is that their voices, their muscle, their enthusiasm and turnout doesn't matter, Lawson added. And that's absolutely true. I mean, you had someone like Keith Ellison who had overwhelming support from all wings of the party, and then all of a sudden they don't like the prospect of someone from the Bernie wing getting control of the party, so they have to push forward someone who wasn't even planning to run. But Obama pushed Tom Perez forward and wanted him to be the new DNC chair because he did not want Bernie Sanders or his wing of the party taking over. And again, this will be their downfall, because what is it that the Bernie Sanders wing of the party wants? We want a single-payer healthcare system. We want the emphasis to be on voters rather than the Democratic Party's donors. We want them to get money out of politics. So the fact that you don't want us to take over the party when those are the things that we're advocating for, it really shows that you're on the wrong side of history here. So look, if Tom Perez wins, this would be horrible for the party, and it would be horrible for everyone in the country, because that means that Democrats would continue to be handicapped by inept, incompetent Democrats that prove that they lost, and Donald Trump will win again in 2020. So, I mean, if they choose Tom Perez, I'll be upset, but not too surprised, honestly.
Support this podcast by joining the independent progressive media revolution today at humanistreport.com.